Every year, one of the most discussed topics is why players like Dwight Howard and Andre Drummond can't make a free throw. And everybody gives out their advice and their explanations and their excuses, and typically they have to do with the player's height or the player's hand size or lack of practice or things of this nature. And usually these things are refuted fairly easily. They often tweet out or show videos of players practicing and making a lot of free throws in practice, and if you look at a 7-footer like Dwight Howard who can't shoot, well, there's a 7-footer like Dirk Nowitzki who's one of the best shooters in the history of the NBA. So there's always counterexamples. As I was reading Strength Training, Conditioning and Coordination, by Franz Bosch, he had a passage that says, such body part training can reduce coordination, especially if it takes place in the hypertrophy sensitive zone, and hence should be avoided in sports in which coordination and or high levels of neural drive matter greatly. If you look at the players who tend to struggle the most from the free throw line, they tend to have large muscular physiques, Dwight Howard, Andre Drummond. If you look at the best three-point shooters, they tend to be wiry strong. Steph Curry, J.J. Redick, Troy Daniels, Kyle Korver, Klay Thompson. These players are strong and they're athletic, but they're wiry strong. They don't have a lot of hypertrophy. They don't have a lot of visible musculature. In the same way that Dwight Howard, whose shoulders are as big as my thighs, walks around and has this big muscular presence. And obviously some of that is position dependent. To play in the post, traditionally you need to be a bigger, stronger player than to play as a point guard, where you can get away with being not quite as big physically. But if you look at the taller players who excel at shooting the basketball from deep, players like a Dirk Nowitzki or a Kelly Olynyk or a Ryan Anderson, you tend to see players who don't have the same type of big muscular physique as a Howard or a Drummond. And again, that helps to define how they play. If you put Olynyk or Nowitzki and try to make them into the same player as a Drummond or a Howard, they probably wouldn't be as effective. So some of this might just be the effect of body types. So you take a big, strong player, you play him close to the basket. You take a wiry, thin, wiry, strong player, you play him further from the basket, regardless of whether or not he's 7 feet tall or 6'3". So some of that likely is simply position dependent and body type dependent. But I think based on what's written in Bosch's book, it could be worth speculating as to how the weight training of some players may or may not affect their shooting. And so players with a big muscular physique who tend not to shoot well from the free throw line, maybe it has nothing to do with their height, or their hand size. Maybe it has to do with the coordination and coordination disruption due to the body part training and due to the lack of coordinative training in their strength training. So I like to use Bosch's definition, which I've also heard from Jim Radcliffe at University of Oregon and Vern Gambetta, that strength training is coordination training with resistance. And so if you look at strength training in this way, it's a little bit different than a typical bodybuilding workout where maybe I'm just doing bicep curls or a shoulder press or something like that. And I'm not linking it to the coordination that occurs in a game. Whereas something like, to me, doing a clean can have some effect or some positive transfer to shooting. When I shot as a player, I preferred to shoot after, doing cleans or squats. So I think, the hypertrophy training may be one of the reasons why these players like Howard or Drummond struggle from the free throw line. It might be more than just simply their height or their hand size. It might be due to their musculature and some kind of disruption in their coordination that prevents them from being a great shooter, like somebody who has a much more connected and coordinated and much better synchronicity, like a Steph Curry or a Klay Thompson.